Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us for part B of Inside the Majors for this week. If you haven't listened to part A, where we reviewed the Daytona 500 races and got to hear from two of our top split winners, jump onto that episode after this one. The order doesn't really matter too much because this edition is going to be exclusively talking about all things Sudspeed Majors Endurance Championship. We've had 2 rounds of the books for the season, both events having 3 full splits, which has been super exciting for a new series on the scene. We certainly had some challenges to start things off, which we'll go into here shortly. The future's looking super bright and the racing is certainly entertaining from start to finish. We'll have a quick look back at the top split results for those rounds. Also joining me, we'll have a chat with the newest full-time member of the MEC admin team, our new Chief Steward. I'm super excited about this, I can't even tell you. Okay, so round 1 of the MEC at Silverstone kicked us off in mid-January with the inaugural 6-hour race. In top split, through several safety cars, some interesting cold tyre shenanigans for the GTPs, and lots of wheel banging, we had a really tight finish with only 4 seconds separating Schneider Motorsport and Marshmallow Racing at the end of 184 laps. In third, we had RS Esports, and despite a lot of pre-race talk around it being an Acura benefit in the GTPs due to some misalignment on my part, the podium was made up of 3 different makes of cars, so that was great to see. In the GT3 class, it was a Delta V Racing 1-2, with the number 2 Porsche leading home the number 14. In third place, we had the leading sports division team of virtual drivers by Go Setup in their BMW M4. I should also acknowledge the lead driver division team of the GTPs in top split was Bulker Black Prototype, who came 4th overall, so well done to them. On to round 2 at Monza, and this time around there was less safety cars, less GTP cold tyre issues, we'll discuss that shortly, but there was also some familiar names again at the sharp end come the end of the race. This time around it was RS Esports who took the GTP win, with Marshmallow Racing again taking second spot on the podium. Now, I want to specifically acknowledge Keanu from the winning team, who set what can only be described as an otherworldly pre-Q lap, took pole on race day, and helped by Pedro, they together led 118 of the 146 laps in what was a pretty dominant display. Joining them in the top 3 was DPR Racing, and a special shout out to the top driver division team of the GTPs in 8th place, Fusion 211. Who had a driver who was super ill through that race. Nice job getting the car home and soldiering on. Tommy. In the GT3 class, there was a multitude of strategies and late race position changes, which meant it was literally exciting to the last metre of the race. Pax Oceany Team Alpha took the class victory and the sports division as well. Fusion Brit Yank Racing in 2nd and Delta V Racing 14 in 3rd. And that was not the order that they started the last lap in for the top 3. The hard luck story being negative Delta by Simgear, who ran out of fuel through the last corner and dropped off the podium as a result. So thanks to all the teams who took part in the first 2 rounds. For those who scored wins, podiums, and importantly, coins in the other splits as well, congratulations to you. Registrations are now open for round 3, the 4-hour race of Sao Paulo in Brazil. With me now, I have Chris Sawalec, who I'm really excited to announce has come on board with the MEC as our new Chief Steward. Chris has been part of the admin team for the first 2 events of the year and has not only been invaluable to me as the series director, but he's also proven to be exactly the sort of calm and controlled official that race control for a series like the MEC needs. So, Chris, thank you for everything you've done so far. Welcome to the admin team in an official and ongoing capacity, and welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
So the Chief Steward role, we won't go technical and in-depth here for the people on the podcast, but a role which will see you taking on some responsibility for incident reviews and the team of volunteers that are going to be making the decisions for the different splits. What is it about being involved in race control that gets you excited and wanting to be part of things like the MEC?
I think over the years, we all love doing this sport, right? And there's got to be people that put it on. No matter if we're involved in real life racing or sim racing, it doesn't evolve unless there's people that want to help it evolve. And I love seeing the sport succeed. I think I came into the majors 24 years ago when the first majors 24 came out, when the whole iRacing shift changed, and I saw the safety car and I was like, this is what the sport needs to be. Like, I think it's more of a sport than we all know and everything we all love about it. And somebody's got to run it. If people aren't involved to push it forward, it's not going to happen. I love being a part of that. But it's easy to sit back and just want to be the driver and run the event, but somebody's got to do that. And I think it's a lot of stuff that everybody forgets about. To be a part of that and drive the sport forward, that's what I truly love. It's not going to get better if we don't try. That's what I love about it.
As I mentioned in the intro, You were part of the race control team for both the first and the second rounds of the MEC. Now, the first round certainly had its challenges. A lot of that fell to me as the series director, and you were involved in trying to overcome some of those challenges on the fly for the first round. Talk about some of the things that got thrown at the race control team in the first round.
I think as a pure volunteer staff, it's people really wanting to help. And I think we're working with volunteers, bring everybody in. There was a lot of stuff thrown at the group. And everybody's truly trying to do the right thing. A lot of pressure from the drivers coming at us, which we may have expected at that point, and somewhat may have deserved at some times. But I think as the first round came through, I think we learned a lot. And not to go back to any of the inadequacies we may have had back then, it's about learning what we can do going forward and how we can build and build and build. But I think everybody that showed up as a race admin truly wanted to do the right thing. And it's about just really organizing the team and building on that. I don't think there's a single one of us that want to make the wrong decision or impact somebody's race. And it is just about learning and building. The first round was the piece of that to really build from and go from there. Hopefully we can kind of put that behind us. We've learned a lot of lessons. I think, Garen, you have as well, and the team will, and, to just build from there.
So one of the great things that I enjoyed, which sounds a bit strange, but that I enjoyed out of the challenges of round one, was the feedback that we got from the teams as a whole. Certainly in the immediate aftermath of the race, I was quite keen to say, we know that didn't go perfectly, and I was as upset about it as anybody. Tell us from your perspective, this is what we were asking of the teams, tell us from your perspective what you saw, what you feel could have been done better, where the pain points were. The really cool thing for me was that the constructive feedback we got, and I have to thank everybody that provided that genuinely. Yes, there was one or two people that just wanted to have a finger point and a bit of a rant, but for the most part, the feedback was really constructive. And what was really cool was that it was consistent. People were identifying the same things over and over that needed to change or that needed improvement. So that gave me a really good blueprint to be able to say, okay, these are the things that we need to look at. This is what we need to address. So we only had 2 weeks between the first and the second round. So that meant we didn't have a lot of time to implement a lot of change. But through some neglect of my real world job and not a lot of sleep, we made a huge amount of changes between the first 2 rounds. And a lot of credit's got to go to Mike for a lot of the technical stuff that he built between the first and second races as well. Just looking back at the changes that we made, most people were aware of them, but just to go back through it, we looked at different things that people said. And the changes that we made were, in no particular order, the balance of performance for the GTPs. I had a misunderstanding of the way that iRacing had implemented a balance recently, so we didn't quite follow what the officials were doing. So we made some changes that we now have a consistent process. Everybody is going to know what to expect in terms of car adjustments and those sorts of things moving forward. It'll all be out the open. It'll be known in advance. Everyone can see what's happening. We'll follow iRacing's lead. A lot of confusion in the first round around how safety cars operated, particularly with the class splits and waiver rounds and those sorts of things. Some people didn't quite understand it. A lot of people said it would just be so much easier if we had a real safety car. So we went, okay, we can implement a real safety car. Let's bring that in. The request to tow feature in terms of what triggers a safety car, I think was liked. It's a very organic way of deciding when safety cars are going to be called. No one knows when it's going to happen. It's in reaction to an actual event on the circuit. I think that was quite well received. However, what we found from an admin perspective was the drain on resources that required was too much for the number of volunteers that we had, which didn't leave enough people to be making decisions in terms of incidents and protests. The system that we had, being the Google form, was slow, inefficient. And so it just meant that there wasn't enough resources to go around. And so we made the decision, we can save ourselves a lot of drain on the volunteer resources by removing the request to tow. So that's why we did it. In the rules and in the announcements when that was put out, I said, this is a temporary suspension of this rule. I do want to get back to it, but we need to expand the base of race control volunteers that we've got and full-time race control people that we've got to be able to implement that. But we're working on that in the back.
I think, Garen, too, just some color on that. I think from the steward's perspective, and maybe just some color for the drivers, right? We had a group of 5, 6 stewards at times, 3 to 5 stewards at times. And there's times we would be working a protest and we would have 5 or 6 more come in the time it took us to work a single protest. I don't want the drivers to feel that we were leaving them out to dry, I guess, for a better term of speaks, but yeah, we were doing our best to keep up with it. So I think some of what you were talking about really outlines that as to why we need to make that change. And probably some more of the stuff that you're going to talk about coming up. We really got buried in protests because they were coming in so hot and heavy. And using the live replay like we did in that round, it took a lot of work, right? The protests would come in and say car 50 on lap 7, right? So we had to go in and really dive through the entire lap and try to find out what it was without a dedicated video pointing us right to it was. So that took some time, right? So that took, that could have taken a few minutes to try to find the event. Then we had to actually go through and analyze the event, look at the facts of what actually happened related to the rules, and then make a decision. So it really drew out the time.
And that was the reason behind the change for the second round, where obviously we've got the brand new web-based protest system, which is fantastic. And yes, there was some issues with the appeals button in round 2, but that's all been sorted for round 3, I promise you. But that's what led to having that system. And yes, it meant for a little bit more effort from the teams to have to clip that video or host that video somewhere. But it did mean that when the stewards are looking at an incident, they can go straight to it. So like Chris said, rather than losing time trying to find the incident, find the right car, sometimes cars would give us the wrong lap number or whatever, so then you'd have to go fishing and looking for it as well. Now it's straight to the point. We can see it. We've got it there in front of us. Very quickly, we know exactly what the incident is around. So again, these are the sorts of things that came out of the post-race review. Very quickly, some other ones like serving of black flags under yellows, closing pit exits. There was some miscommunication around that. There was different interpretations around what both of those rules actually meant for the first round, which kind of is partly on me. And then it came out of, we obviously had the rule set. We had different rules being announced in the MEC announcements channel. There was things that were said in the driver's briefing. So there was all of these different sources or places people could get rules and information from. We've now consolidated all of that so that any change to any rules or regulations from the round before are now in a single document 2 days before the race, goes out that everybody could read. So there's only one source of truth so that people know what's going on. Interpretations can't be left out there, left hanging, and people doing different things. So, yeah. And back to Chris's point about the number of incidents that were coming in as well, that's why we've also introduced the protest token system. Look, to be frank, there was a number of protests in the first round that made me just think, really, like, time to harden up a little bit. Avoidable contact doesn't mean they scratched the paintwork on the back left of my car and gave me a 0x or a 1x and no one lost any time and nobody had any damage. We don't care in race control. Please don't protest that stuff. So anyway, these are all the things that we looked at post the first race, and then we brought in changes. I think with the exception of the safety car change, which we made, trying to have that faster lap at the end to give the GTPs a chance to warm up their tyres and what that then meant from a restart perspective. I think all of the changes were fairly well received and they all worked, which is great. So it means that it gives us confidence that when we do need to look at things, we do need to change rules into the future, that we can make that happen fairly quickly on a round-by-round basis even. And it's just going to mean the constant evolution and constant improvement of the series so that people are getting what they want out of it. We want them to enjoy it. We want them to come back. Yeah, that was what we did between the rounds. And Chris, I don't know if you wanted to talk from a race control perspective about how round 2 went with those changes and the improvements that it made or how it helped from your side of things as well.
And yeah, absolutely, actually, because it made our side, the marshal side, the race control side, much more streamlined. And I think we looked at the end of the event, and Garen could probably attest to this as well. Like we got to the end of the event and we're like, wow, all the protests have been handled. We've managed pretty much everything. There was some discussion on a few that the way they were handled, pretty much everything was handled. Whereas in round 1, I think we left the event with a large part of the latter part of the race unhandled. So the system worked much better. I think you spoke about the token system, and I think that was huge because in round 1, you're right. There was a lot of protests where scratch my paint. There was nothing there. I think the quality of the protests were much better in round 2, to where there was a lot of legit things that we had to discuss and go, wait a minute. Okay, this is a protest. Let's figure it out and see what we have to do here. So rather than filtering through 80% of the protests were just no further action. So I think the token system was good. I think it allowed the marshals on our side with the new website system to really be able to look at it and then go, okay, we were missing some things, or we're missing some videos, or we need a new video. We can send the token back and go, okay, we need more information. So we could be fair on our side and go, okay, we can give you your token back and then let you submit a better protest that we can understand maybe a little bit better, make a ruling on. I think that was a huge part of round 2. I think the safety car was a big improvement from the call for tow, although I'd still love to see the call for tow. I think you're right. We just need more people. But the safety car added a lot more organization to it with the amount of people that we have currently. And I think it was well received. The more we can build on the feedback from the community, the better, because we're going to take that feedback and build from it, as I think as we approved in the last couple of events. The more feedback we can get, the better, because we want to make it right for the community.
Looking ahead to round 3, the changes that we've got in the pipeline for that, one of the ones that is going to happen is the notifications for teams around protests. The protest page has been developed even further, and everybody in the series obviously has a major series profile on the website. It's part of the requirement to register. So the way that the system will now work is that when a protest comes in and or a penalty is given to a team, every registered member of that team will be given a notification on the major's website that you have been protested. You have been given a penalty. So rather than it being a manual process of having to be informed or teams having to necessarily be following along the logs of protests and reading, is anything to do with my team or our car number or what have you, you'll now be given a specific notification. Something needs your attention. So I think that it's going to make it a very easy way for teams to know that something needs doing from their side. And this will include the period for appealing a penalty against you. There'll no longer be notifications in the sim and then time given and questions around how long or when did the protest actually come in and timings and that sort of stuff. It'll now be fully automated. So the onus will be on the teams to, if they're not following the protest logs for their split, to at least have the website open so that notifications will appear for them and then they can see that something needs doing. If you're not following along and you don't see the notification and you get a penalty and the appeal window is already up and then it's applied to you in sim, there's no point in arguing at that point.
And I think we received some feedback. I know we've talked a lot about feedback. We received some feedback that there was too much chatter on the radio. And I think this will eliminate a lot of that as well. So, take the feedback and run with it, I guess, right? So there'll be less chatter, race control chatter on the radio.
Yeah, it'll only be for things that need to happen, not just making people aware of something. Yeah, that'll be happening through other means. The other thing that we'll be doing is taking another look at the safety car process again, largely around what speeds things are going to be done with. Obviously, we had the increase the speed up to about 80% of race pace for the last lap or two at the second round. Some feedback on that, just because of the way the safety car strung out, is that actually meant for people at the very end of the line, it was actually quite hard for them to catch up again before the restart with just the way that it worked. But also we're going to need to have another look at how things are going to work with the new tyre model, especially for the GTPs. If the tyres are going to get crazy cold, crazy fast, we need to figure out how we're going to deal with that. Some of it might just have to be, you're going to have to drive to what we've got, but we will have a look at how we're going to deal with that, both the speed of the safety car for various portions of the process, but also what we do to make sure that cars aren't just flying off everywhere after a safety car, as we've had at round 1, where obviously going around for 3 laps at pit lane speed meant that the tyres were ice cubes.
Yeah, I think we recognize that, hey, you got to find the right balance here. Yeah, everybody wants reality, right? Everybody throws out, well, we want reality. In reality, you don't have a pace car that speeds up, right? But everybody puts a lot of effort and time into these events, and we just want to make sure that everybody has a fair chance.
I think that's a reasonable roundup of where things are at with the MEC for so far this season.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's just, let's build on the progress, and the more feedback everybody can share, the more it's going to help us. I think everybody wants to make it better. And I think you're hard pressed to find a better series than where we're at here in the major series. And the more feedback we can build, the just better we'll make it. So as long as it's constructive, right? And we'll keep building on it.
I'm always happy to hear feedback that's constructive. You don't have to tell me that I'm doing everything perfect. If you can see that I'm doing something wrong, if you can see that the series is doing something in a way that could be improved, we're always happy to hear it. Don't just point fingers and swear and tell us that we're idiots and that we don't know what we're doing. That's not helpful. if you've got alternate ideas or you've got things that you can see that could potentially be improved, then we are always happy to hear it. And I hope that I've given the impression that I am happy to put my hand up when I get things wrong. I am always transparent in what we're doing and why we're doing it or how things have been done. There's no secrets, and I'm always happy to answer questions. Yeah, hopefully it's a series that people feel like they're being heard and that they're actually a part of. We want to improve things for you. So yeah, Chris, I think that's a great place to leave the MEC discussions. But one thing that I will ask you about before we leave is you've got a real world racing trip coming up this weekend, which I think a lot of people will be quite jealous about. So I know that I certainly am. You're headed to Sebring for the real race.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough not to live too far from there. I've done a lot of real world, either track marshaling or stewarding or some other stuff in the NASCAR series to where I've worked on track. And this weekend coming up, I'll be a corner marshal at Sebring. I've got my white coveralls out in the garage ready to go, and I don't quite know where I'm working yet, but I'll be a flag marshal at one of the corners for the 12 hours coming up this weekend. Weather's supposed to be amazing, and it's probably not quite an iRacing weather event this weekend, but weather's supposed to be sunny and warm, and it should be an amazing event. Looking forward to hearing that Aston ripping by and hearing what that sounds like for 12 hours. So it should be an amazing weekend. I'll be there all day Friday and Saturday. Yeah, more to come. More updates I'll provide as the weekend goes, but yeah, pretty excited.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to get a selfie with the inflatable palm tree at turn 3.
I can do that. I've been there before. We'll see what corner I'm working. We'll see if I'm in that area, but I think I get some time to roam throughout the weekend as well. So I'll see what I can do. But there's nothing better than that row of palm trees at sunset on Saturday night during the 12 hours for sure.
It's been there for so many years that it's even in the iRacing scan of the track. So there you go.
The community.
So keep an eye out for that on the Discord. Hopefully a selfie of Chris with the palm tree. Thanks for your time today in having a chat with us, Chris. As I said at the beginning, thank you for everything you've done so far from a race control perspective for the MEC, and welcome on board in your official capacity and also taking some of the load off me. So yeah, you are most welcome. Thank you very much for coming on.
So look forward to it. Look forward to the future.
Okay, so after this, we're going to change tack a little bit and move away from the stewarding and race control side of things. And we're going to talk to Adam Preston, the chief broadcaster for the MEC in 2025. Hi, everyone. Let me just interrupt things for a few seconds to let you know that Sudspeed, partner of the Majors Endurance Championship, has recently dropped some wicked new designs to add to their already amazing sim racing glove range. Head on over to sudspeed.com and take a look at the new number 51 and Mulsanne designs, the latter one being Le Mans inspired, and get yourself a pair before the word gets out and they're all gone. Also, be sure to check out the rest of the range as well, including the just restocked original Alpha design, back due to demand from the Sudspeed fanbase. When checking out, don't forget to use the code MAJORS to secure 10% off the price. Not only will you get a little discount, but that amount will be matched by Sudspeed to donate to Major Series charities at the end of 2025. So it's a win-win. So head to the website, sudspeed.com, and use the discount code to get a set of amazing Sudspeed mittens. Sim racing gloves by sim racers for sim racers. Okay, let's get back to the podcast. Here at the Majors, our great and fearless leader, Mike, has always entertained the idea of what he would term a community broadcast, and so producing streams of the Majors series from within. He's often had this idea of what he termed Radio Le Majors, for people that are familiar with Radio Le Mans, for the Majors 24, where people from within the Majors series would compare a broadcast, be that audio or potentially video, discussing and commentating on the various splits of the Majors 24. When the MEC came to be, we wanted to try and make that happen. That idea of broadcasting or streaming from within the Majors community. And as it turned out, one of our own, Adam Preston, who joins us on the podcast today, had been building up to streaming for quite a number of years at a enthusiast level and took on the task of being the primary broadcaster for the MEC. So, Adam, welcome to the Inside the Majors podcast on today's MEC-focused episode. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Garen. I'm really excited to be here and chat about all this.
So before we get into the ins and outs of broadcasting iRacing events, how did you come to be involved with the Majors initially?
It came a couple of years ago, back in 2022. I was hanging out with the team formerly known as NRG, now Fusion, and I was watching those guys get involved in the major series, and they were always talking about it in our chats. We worked together in the officials enduros, and then I thought, you know what, let's have a go. So I started doing a couple of cameo appearances, including Daytona, Le Mans. I think I did 3 races that season, and I've always just done little cameos, just jumping in there. But just watching everyone develop, learn everything like that, I thought I wanted to get in it more. And so this season, I'm just throwing myself into it full tilt.
And so what are the things that you've liked about the series from a driving perspective?
I like the preparation that has to go into it. If it isn't just a rock up on race day or the day before race day, pick a set and go. The fact you have to practice, you have to put the laps in, the qualifying. There's a lot more deeper work goes into it. But also when you're on the track, especially in the races that I've been involved in, there's a lot more respect between drivers side by side that you wouldn't get in the officials. So I really like that kind of thing. I also like the split down with the pros and the sportsmen because it means I'm actually racing people of my caliber and above my caliber a little bit as opposed to astronomical pro drivers.
And what would you say your highlight have been of your majors driving career so far?
That's a tricky one. I think the inadvertent week-long endurance that was Daytona 2022, where in the practice laps, me and Josh got a bit carried away and ended up smacking down 2,000 laps around the track that week. That really did set me up for a good race the following day. I think that's got to be it. If not, it'd be winning the coin at Le Mans 24 a couple of years ago, or the recent round 1 this year at Daytona, where I managed to bring home maximum points.
For those that have joined the series just this year or only compete in the MEC, in the Majors series, the individual driver series, a couple of years ago, there was a coin on offer for whoever did the most practice laps in the week leading up to the race in the Majors practice servers. So, yeah, as Adam said, he and another decided that they were both gunning for a coin one week, and it turned into a who could operate on the least sleep and who could spend the most time in their rig. So, yeah, that was quite entertaining for the rest of us watching that weren't having to put in the laps. But anyway, that's, yeah, we no longer do that in the majors, I think, to save people's health and sanity from exactly those kinds of scenarios. So, okay, so that's the driving part and how you got involved in the major series proper. So how did the taking on of the MEC broadcast come about?
Well, it dates back to my earlier days in iRacing when I was just streaming for fun, it's just streaming for memories. So I created a channel, called it Coaction Simsport. That was actually the name of my team that got integrated into NRG. And just the more I did it and the more I got carried away with the coding with SDK Gaming, it started to become a bit more of a passion. And then I just started recording lots of races for NRG and a couple of others. And then with my development in this, it caught some attention, especially from a particular podcast presenter. And Mike caught wind of it as well and offered me a trial on to do Blackout and see how things go along. Because like you say, the idea behind the MEC broadcast is meant to be an internal thing by drivers for drivers. And so I felt, and Mike felt, that it was a good suit that I could do those broadcasting considering the work that was been done beforehand.
And had you ever done anything on this scale as far as streaming is concerned before?
Oh, no, this is Blackout was my first full-on producing broadcasting gig with full-on commentary. If anyone ever watches any of the previous videos, they'll see that I'm just part of the team and having a laugh and a giggle. But actual full-on commentary, this is my first proper gig. I think I did one last year as a little bit of a test around, I think it was Hockenheim, but it wasn't to this scale whatsoever. This is new territory for me.
So starting with Blackout, a 12-hour race where the entire race is in the dark, having to take on commentary as well. What could go wrong?
No, exactly. If it wasn't my computer suffering, it was my voice suffering.
Obviously, it went well enough. Mike offered for you to carry on with the MEC broadcast this year. Round 1, from my perspective, putting my series director and race director hat on, had some challenges. How did it go from the broadcast perspective?
Watching everything go down, from a viewer point of view, it was good fun to watch. Having the understanding from racing control perspectives, and we have Bryant with us, and then the knowledge from Blackout, it went really well. We did have challenges with a few technical bits, which obviously for me, I want to do as as much of a professional job as I can. Yes, I have a laugh and a giggle with the viewers and with my co-commentators, but deep down, I want it to be the best that it can be. So when we was having those stuttering issues, that was a bit, I felt embarrassed by that. I felt I let people down. So that was definitely something that I wanted to work on towards the second round, is identifying why that happened and put an end to it. Then the other side is like one of the things that we're very passionate about with the MEC streaming is it isn't just about the front runners, it's about anybody and everybody that's involved in some kind of battle. So I continuously looking, trying to catch a battle as it's raging. Doesn't matter where they're positioned in the race. They could be 12th and 13th. They could be 20th and 21st. It doesn't matter. It's if it leads to good racing, that's what I'm sure people want to see. And so trying to keep an eye on the timing screen, trying to predict when fights are about to happen, as well as understand the scenario around everyone else. That was quite challenging.
As I discussed in the first part of this podcast with Chris, obviously we had a number of challenges from the administration side in that first round, and we really analysed where we could improve at the end of that first round. And it was only a 2-week turnaround to round 2. So it was pretty tight for us to implement those changes within the 2-week period. Did you do the same from the broadcast and streaming side in terms of making changes from rounds 1 to 2?
Yeah, 100%. What was really nice was we had good engagement from drivers, from viewers, asking, for example, instead of just having GTP and GT3, is it possible to split them down to know who's driver, who's sports, who's elite, etc.? And so I could see the absolute value in that. And so in that window between round 1 and round 2, not only was I fixing the technical stuff to make sure the stuttering didn't happen again, but I looked at making our timing tower a lot more informative for the viewers so they knew who was in what battle where. Also bringing in another commentator as well to help out, who has a good specific side on the GT3, so we partnered up really well. And then we was working on the league system, so we've never seen the league table being put up on the stream before. And so that was something new, something that we were developing and something we're looking at developing further to give it a more team feel, ready for round 3.
And I think certainly come round 5, that'll also be really key as championship implications get played out over the 8 hours of the final round. The improvements that you put in place for round 2, certainly from what I've seen, and I haven't seen the full 4 hours, so just because my life gets too busy, but from what I've seen, it certainly looked like everything ran really well. You were happier with how round 2 went?
Yeah, very much so. We had a good system in place. Like I said, the technical bits were dealt with. I spent days beforehand just checking everything through, stress testing the stream. We've got ideas for going forward as well to make things a little bit more easy in the management side of it, but very happy with how things turned out.
In terms of what the viewers will see, on top of league tables that you mentioned already, are there other things you've got in the pipeline that you can share?
It's pretty difficult to share because at the moment I'm trying to see if it's even possible. I'm actually talking with the guys at SDK Gaming to see if my vision can become a reality, but we're working within our means, working with the data that's available. And so what I want to try and do is implement more of a team feel. So instead of just saying the team, but who's in the team and having that on a visual display. But obviously in the 15 minutes before the race, packing all that in is quite something. So we're still looking through the initial development points, but we always welcome feedback. So it was lovely at the end of round 1 when drivers were saying, is it possible to add this to the stream? Stuff like that. Give us feedback, give me ideas that I may not have thought of. And you never know, it might find its way into round 3, round 4.
Oh, can't wait to see some of those improvements. A couple of the features of the MEC that we have is things like safety cars and live admins where we're making decisions about incidents, potentially applying penalties as the race is going on. How does things like that impact a stream from your side where there's all of these developments going on and that need your attention?
I like it, if I'm honest. When it comes down to the safety cars, it becomes less about scanning the tower to see where the battles are, and we can take a little bit of a step back. Because if you imagine we're trying to watch 40-odd drivers on a screen as well as watching the actual live racing, it's quite intense. So when the safety car gets called, it switches the mentality of where's the battle to where's the strategies. And sometimes that enables us to do some of our favorites. One of the things I brought over from my own stream to here is what I call the livery look, where we check out the liveries, and it gives an opportunity to showcase the efforts that people make to make their cars look good. And we have a little bit of tongue-in-cheek at times about whether one's just copying a template or some of the more beautiful ones that have come through. So that's been quite nice. We react pretty much in time with everyone else. So when we hear race control go safety car, that's, oh, we got a safety car, which is basically similar to how I am when I'm in the car. And we try and make the stream as informative as we can during that phase.
And in terms of audience interaction during the race, who makes up your audience base? What sort of interaction do you get to have with them as you're broadcasting and commentating on this live?
We get a variety of interaction. I think on this point, I've got to do a shout out to Henry's dad. Henry's one of the drivers in he's a pro team, and he's always on stream chatting with us in the chat, which is great. He's always very supportive in terms of what we do and what his son does, and it's really nice. It has that family feel. Balka are quite vocal in there as well, so big shout out to them. The kind of interactions we get are generally, call outs to teams, and sometimes we get, how's this team doing? And so we'll give them a little report and even put them on the stream. So we'll do a little showcase. That's the main kind of interactions we get. Obviously, like I said, we get the feedback as well about such a body is a bit quiet, which is always helpful and constructive for us. Generally speaking, it's nice chatting, and it's nice that we get people coming into the stream asking for a little bit of an update, and if we can, we give them that update. And then the fact they say thank you at the end is quite nice as well. So we encourage lots of interaction, especially if it's like a shout out to a car, and then we'll go and have a look at that car and we'll try and communicate directly. We answer questions, so they ask about safety car procedures, things like this, and so I'm able to answer those questions straight away.
You have to know the rule book as well.
Exactly. I try and make it a point that I know what I'm on about when I'm giving the advice. Obviously, with the change of rules between week 1, week 2, I had to study that up quite quickly to make sure I could understand it and articulate it, because obviously on stream, you've got to have the ability of explaining things in a manner that everyone gets.
You worked with a couple of different commentators for rounds 1 and round 2. What sort of challenges does not being in the same room as the person that you're talking to or talking with?
Naturally, you have to just go off what the other person is saying in terms of reading their voice. We can't just point to something and say, oh, let's look at that. We have to articulate a way where we both understand what car we're looking at, what class we're looking at, bouncing off each other, when's the right time. So you can't read off each other's expressions. Also, it means if we're trying to interact with about something off stream, that can sometimes be a challenge of missing messages. So I think that's the biggest challenge. But to be honest, with how cool everyone's been from Blackout to now, I've loved working with everybody that I've worked with. And so we don't see it as much of a challenge, to be honest, because we meet before, we chat, we get to know each other, and we develop that ability of reading off each other.
MEC will be done by the middle of the year. Is this something that you might want to expand and take on, whether it's with the major series or even outside the major series? Something that you want to take on more of going into the future?
It's certainly given me that step up in terms of my capabilities to consider it again going forward. I mean, within the MEC, within majors, obviously, I also consider the fact that I'm a driver. So I have to think about that, because part of me was going to race in the MEC. But then when it came about helping out and doing this, I decided to take on this role instead. The door's open, I would say, I think is the best answer. The door is open to explore other possibilities afterwards, but at the same time, I do love being in the car, so depends where everything lies and if the stars aligned.
Well, whether it's hearing your voice on the stream or banging wheels with you on the track, Adam, thank you for what you do bring to the major series and to the MEC. It's been a great start to the year. It's awesome, as you said, to have a stream by major series drivers for the major series drivers, and may it continue and onwards and upwards from here. So, thanks for coming on the podcast today and give us a bit of insight into how it's been from your side of things. And we'll see you in Brazil for round 3.
I just want to say thank you to you as well, Garen, because you're the man that's put the MEC together. The book lies with you, and it's the way you approach this is in such a high standard manner that I think everyone in majors is lucky to have this quality going forward. So thank you to you, thank you to Mike for giving me this opportunity, and thank you to the drivers, because without the standard of driving that we see, the stream wouldn't be as good. Simple as that. It's an absolute joy being here, and so let's all go forward together. Rock on.